Cue that beat.
This is what happens. You guys just hear something Eagles, and then it's like a dog. He sees a squirrel.
I would say 75% of all NFL quarterbacks can be dialed down to different flavors of Kirk Cousins. They're all just Kirk Cousins. All of them.
So there's conditions. No, I absolutely understand do not draft list. If someone's on my do not draft list, I am not drafting him.
Hey guys, welcome into the Mind the Gap podcast. It is day one of the Combine. It's I think it just wrapped up or is wrapping up as we speak. We're going to react to it, give our instant reactions to some of the stuff we saw. We saw drills and weigh-ins from defensive line, edge rushers, and linebackers today. So a fun group that we talked about. We talked about edge on a recent podcast. It's a really talented upper-level D-line class. Linebacker has some names at the very least. It's hard to find good linebackers in today's college system, but there are some good names. And then after that, we're going to fully break down the offensive line group in this 2025 draft class. It is offensive line preview day, which we're going to lead into talking about the Combine. Shamar Stewart. Start there.
Yes, because on the Edge podcast, we talked about how important having elite physical traits are when it comes to being a high-level top 10, top 15 type edge rusher in the NFL. And then Shamar Stewart went out and said, not only am I a great athlete, not only am I a freak, I am the freak because I'm literally at this point the highest relative athletic score of defensive ends ever.
The number one out of 1,802 defensive ends from 1987 to 2025 per Kentley Platt, and it shows. 40-yard dash, 4.95, which was one of the fastest of the day.
4.59.
4.59, right. My bad. A 2.66 unofficial 20-yard split and a 1.58 10-yard split, which is blazingly quick. Unreal.
For context, not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But for context, James Pierce Jr., who is 245 pounds and
looked great today,
was one of the quickest, looked really good, ran a 1.56 10-yard split. Shamar Stewart at 1.58, weighing almost 20 pounds more. Actually, more than 20 pounds more.
267, standing 6'5", and we haven't even gotten to the jumping. I mean, a 40-inch vertical jump, one of the best of the day. I think it's tied with best of the day with Landon Jackson, and then a 10-foot 11-inch broad jump, brother. it does not get better than that.
Crazy to think about. Yeah, and I proposed possibly moving him to IDL on the last pod.
You can't.
I think he solidified himself as a pure edge player today with the speed and the numbers. It's tantalizing how impressive this performance was, and it's historic nonetheless. But I'm excited to see how high he goes. You guys tried to convince me to put him a lot higher than I did, but I was seeing him as an IDL on the last pod, so therefore I did move him up as an edge to number 10. I don't know if I can go higher right now than that because there are some big names in my top 10, which big board coming next week.
Yeah.
But it's really going to be exciting to see how much farther he does rise after maybe in even better pro day. His numbers could be better there.
It's absurd. And I genuinely think, do not take this for granted, listener. Dear listener, don't take this for granted. This is unreal that we're getting a generation. I'm going to say it. Generational, big G generational athlete at this defensive end position. We don't know if it'll fully pan out, but it's really something to be excited about. And I have a fun stat. So first off, Myles Garrett, 9.98 RAS compared to Shamar's 10. Myles Garrett is 6'4", Shamar Stewart 6'5", 267 to 272. Garrett was a little heavier. When it comes to running, Shamar ran a 4.59, and Garrett ran a 4.64 with a 1.63 10-yard split compared to Shamar's 1.58. Vertical jump, Garrett jumped 1 inch higher, 41 versus Shamar's 40. And then Shamar went 3 inches farther on the broad jump, 10.08 versus 10.11. On the NFL Combine broadcast on NFL Network, they had a stat. Highest vertical jump at 260 plus pounds. So you got to be, that's about threshold, 260 plus. Since 2003, there were four guys listed. Myles Garrett at 41 inches. Landon Jackson at 40 and a half. That was this year. 2006, Mario Williams, 40 and a half. And Shamar Stewart at 40. So I thought, like, that's cool. We got two prospects there, right? We got Shamar and Landon, both athletic freaks. That's really cool. Let's compare them to the guys that were drafted. Garrett in 2017. Well,
Mario Williams was not that great. He bounced around a lot.
Do you want to say, hold that thought, because I looked up his Pro Football Reference. AP Defensive Rookie of the Year. He got votes for it. He got votes for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He was Pro Bowl 4 times. What was this? What's this?
Dude, I remember Mario Williams on the back end of his career and his Oakland days and his Panther days specifically.
You're not thinking of the right one then.
I was going to say.
You're not thinking of the right Mario Williams. Mario Williams, drafted by the Houston Texans in 2006, played 5 years with the Texans, 4 with Buffalo, retired as a Miami Dolphin, all of them at outside edge rusher. And in those years, 4.5 sacks his rookie year, 14, 12, 9, 8.5, 5, 10.5, 13, 14.5, and his last 2 seasons he goes 5 and 1.5. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, Defensive Player of the Year, votes for Defensive Player of the Year, absurdly talented, one of the best edge rushers of his time. I think it says something about Shamar and Landon that they're up there in this conversation.
And I love what both of the Texas A&M edge rushers did. We talked about this also on the Edge Pod, but both of those guys playing for Texas A&M played a lot in the B gap, so in between the guard and the tackle. And so they bulked up. Shamar was listed at 290 on Texas A&M's website, came into the Senior Bowl at 281, and Scorton was listed at 285. Scorton was down in the 250s. Shamar, as we talked about, is at 267. And I do like this because I think one of the reasons why Ryan's going back and forth is because 290 is a tweener type of weight. You're probably a little too heavy to be rushing from the edge consistently, but you're not heavy enough, most likely, to be playing down in the interior D line. And so I like that they are both not becoming, 240-pound speed rushers, but they're trimming some weight and getting to a good body type to go out and play edge consistently.
By the way, I don't want to discredit Mario Williams, 4-time All-Pro. 3-time All-Pro. Twice second team, once first team. In 2014 with Buffalo, the year he had 14.5 sacks and 19 TFLs, 18 QB hits. Brother was working.
What I don't want to happen, though, with all this Shamar Stewart glazing is people to forget Nick Scorton.
Glazing?
It was just as good on the other side. And remember, when we started this process, it was a 1A, 1B. So I don't want the tape. This.
And then he performed at the Combine. It was a 1A, 1B before the research.
Scorton wasn't that bad either.
It wasn't Shamar.
Okay, yes. But it's a 1A, 1B, dude.
No, it's not.
Oh, I can't get there. I like Scorton, though. Scorton should probably be a first-round pick.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't want, again, not with Shamar, but I don't want people to be like, oh, Shamar's up here, and then just forget about Scorton.
I don't think we're forgetting about Scorton. I think Scorton is just in a completely different level than Shamar. Like, there's legit levels to this. If you're looking at the edge tiers that we talked about on the last show, we have tier 1, which is Abdul Carter. Shamar Stewart was in that tier 2 with Mike Green, Michael, James Pierce Jr. And then tier 3, Nick Scorton, along with, for me, Donovan Ezeraku and Princely Umanmielen. Princely is actually a question. I didn't like his combine. But I think at this point, you got to go tier 1. This is my half-baked idea. Tier 1, Abdul Carter, true blue-chip talent. Tier 2, top 10 picks. That would be Shamar Stewart, Jalen Walker, if he's just playing edge, linebacker, whatever. But that's Shamar Stewart, Jalen Walker. And then you have the first rounders of Mike Green, Michael, James Pierce Jr., And then you have the mid to late first rounders of Ezeraku, Uman Mielen, and Skorton. So this is a crazy edge class. Crazy. I don't want it to go understated, but Shamar has elevated himself above the rest of the pack, not named Carter.
I'm there with you. He was 2 in my edge rankings. I'm not moving that. He's a top 10 guy previewing the big board that we'll talk about next week. And he's just not getting out of the top 10 picks.
No, he's not. He's going to be incredible, and I can't wait to see what he does in the league. Hopefully not in the NFC East, because I don't want to face that. I already have to place Jared versus...
Last mock, he went to the Cowboys, your favorite team. So.
That is a horrible idea, and I will never be letting it happen again. Go to the Panthers. If he goes to the Panthers, that'd be a lot of fun, actually. I have family in Carolina. I could get myself a Stewart jersey.
Defense.
They do.
So.
Desperately. That's actually not a half bad idea. Feels like a kind of pseudo Jadeveon Clowney, Brian Burns replacement. Anyways, is there anything else we want to hit from the combine today? I think it's been a fun combine day.
So fun. Defensive tackles. Went out there. Really good defensive tackle class. CJ West is one of my favorite underrated guys. 10-yard split, 1.73.
SMU, right?
Indiana.
Okay. They're similar. They're close enough, logo-wise.
Yeah, sure.
One's in Texas and one's in Indiana.
They have red, I guess.
There was some SMU guy that was
in both. So Jared Harrison Hunt, who played for SMU, had the fastest 10-yard split. So I think that might have been what you were thinking about. But CJ West coming in at 1.73, that's fifth at 316 pounds. So he is unbelievably quick on tape. You see the explosiveness in the way that he's able to pop through offensive linemen, disrupt and shed. And then he showed that in his combine workouts, which we talked about it when we previewed the combine. That's what you want to see, is athleticism that is on the football field, then translates into testing and confirms it. So CJ West, I think, had a really good day. Darius Alexander, another name from Toledo. And then the last one that I think really killed it would be Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. Same type of player.
He's a consensus like top 3-4 interior lineman, right? It seems like Daniel Jeremiah has him mocked, I think, as DT3, if I'm remembering correctly. And PFF has him pretty high as well. He seems like a consensus first-round-ish guy. And he was one of the names that everyone was like, oh, let's watch this when it came up on the combine.
Yeah, I think he'll be floating on the edge of that late first, early second. And I need to fully deep dive him because I watched him against Ohio State and honestly was not wildly impressed with what I saw. But that is just one game. And I was watching it more for the offensive lineman, so can get lost in the shuffle there.
Did you see the Mason Graham quote from today? They said, "Hey Mason, what clips should you tell coaches to go watch of you to see what your game is like?" He goes, "Just go watch the whole Ohio State game. Watch the whole game. That's all you need."
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
He destroyed that entire offense. Him and Kenneth Grant. It was wild to watch.
Ty Robinson out of Nebraska had himself a good day. He was third in the 10-yard split with a 1.71, and I think he was first among defensive linemen with a 4.83 40-yard dash. And standing,
he'll be a day 2 pick.
Yeah, he looks good. I'm curious. He seems lighter. He's 288, 6'5", 288. So he's another one of those tweeners like we were talking about, Ryan. I don't think he's full on interior, but if he is, he's going to be a more pass rushy interior. He's not going to be more the big
pass
old Jordan.
Rushy.
Pass rushy. Yeah, it's a term now. He's not Jordan Davis who's going to stand there and be a wall. He's going to get upfield. I'm curious to see what he does because he definitely performed well.
Yeah, and I even saw comps to Braden Fisk, which is a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
He's got juice, and he is a nasty dude in the middle. He's a very good run stopper and he showed out on a Nebraska defense that overall wasn't great.
It's Matt Rule for you. Jeez, Matt Rule catching strays. I didn't mean for that to come off so badly.
Also, guy rising, I talked about him, Darius Alexander, who he had a very good Senior Bowl and then stacked it with a really, really good combine performance. He's, I think, going to be a riser, more of a day 2 guy, unless anybody else disagrees.
No, I'm with you. It's fun to watch another Toledo kid have a really good Senior Bowl and then come and perform really well at the combine. It's just a trend for that school. Quinyon Mitchell last year being the big Toledo name to perform well in this draft cycle. At linebacker, we had a few good guys test. Jihad Campbell performed really well. Carson Schweisinger, according to the NFL results only did the broad jump or vertical jump and just got out of there after the vert jump, but he was top 2 in vertical jump in linebackers. Shout out, bro, I guess. I mean,
it's interesting, though, because I feel like he definitely could have set himself apart from the rest of the group by performing these drills, but we're now going to have to wait until his pro day to see where he stands in all the measurables. So
right. And
it's a little annoying.
It is, especially since he's like the film nerd's darling right now. I mean, Ben Solak, I think Daniel Jeremiah, and there was one other guy who was falling in love with him on Twitter. It might have been Sycamore for
Dane Brugler. I know. Really likes him as well.
Yeah, I thought so. There's a bunch of draft nerds who are very good at their jobs who like Schweissinger. It's a thin linebacker class. There's like 3 guys: Campbell, Schweissinger, and there's one more that I didn't mention. Walker, of course, but Walker didn't test because he's a jerkhead, and I didn't get to watch him run the 40.
He doesn't want to compete. None of these kids want to compete anymore.
No, this generation just doesn't want to compete. It's depressing.
They just want their participation trophy.
It is crazy. I do wish people would just go out and I don't understand why you
being
don't
scared
test. And
I understand if you're hurt, but I agree, Tyler.
Yeah, because Abdul Carter has a stress fracture in his foot. Makes sense, right? Totally get that. But Walker, especially when you're going to absolutely destroy all the athletic testing, I don't really understand why you wouldn't do it.
I think because if you're looking at a guy like Princely Uman-Mielen, we're sitting here and we're like, right? Because he weighed a little lighter than we expected and performed a little worse than we expected. He ran a 4.72 at weighing in a little light, whereas Shamar was standing at 267 and ran the 4.47. Or no, the 4.59. Pierce ran the 4.47.
That can change in the pro day, though.
It could, but there's something about the NFL Combine that's like, it has eyes on it. Right, the 3 of us have been watching it all day. I've been actually like watching the broadcast. You guys have been keeping up with it on Twitter. Having a bad combine could really hurt draft stock, which I understand why players sit out of it, whether that be medicals or pure choice, like Shadur is doing. Because if Shadur has a bad throwing day, that's going to go crazy viral. Whereas Dion and the rest of Colorado coaching staff can control who is up there on the balcony watching him throw at the Colorado Pro Day, and the only clips that get out are the good ones. You know, there's an uncontrollable element to the combine that pro days don't have. So I do understand it, but come on, compete. Like, especially for a guy like Walker, who was gonna kill the 40, was gonna kill the jumps. I wanted to see it.
Yeah, if I was a coach, I would be advising players to perform at the combine. And I agree with Tyler. It's a ridiculous sentiment to try to have players just wait until the pro day for better numbers. I mean, yes, your pro days are, for the most part, going to have better numbers, but just run at the combine. People just want to see, put you somewhere on their board.
And plenty of people have established their draft stock after it. I was watching a clip of Saquon when he got done with his combine, and he destroyed it. And that pretty much at that point solidified that he was going to go to the Giants in that draft at the number 2 pick. You can really help yourself. It's not going to hurt you. I'm not knocking any of these guys for not testing. They're not dropping because of it. Sanders, Walker, any of these guys that don't test. But I guess it's just unfortunate, and I just get annoyed by it.
Yeah,
I will say,
old man yells at clouds.
Sorry to interrupt you, Aaron. I will say there was one guy that underperformed. Alfred Collins of Texas weighed 334 and put up only a 26-inch vert and 8-foot broad jump. So not great for a guy that was possibly looking to go in the first 2 rounds. I moved him down quite a bit in the big board rankings, but when we get to defensive lineman, obviously we'll cover him.
Yeah, I'm excited for our interior defensive line pod. That's gonna be a good one. And we'll hit linebackers eventually. We might do it like combined secondary and linebackers because there's like, again, 3 of them. Are we ready to move on to tackles and just full on offensive line preview? We got a show to do, and we've yet to get to it.
Let's do it.
So let's just start easy. Let's talk about this tackle class as a whole and this offensive line class, because for the sake of the pod, we're combining tackles and interior and centers. all into one big offensive line grouping. That's not how they're going to appear on our big board. We're going to have them broken down by position. But this way, we have the opportunity to talk about, should we move them to guard? If they move to guard, where do they rise? Where do they fall in our rankings? Etc. So as guys who've been studying this draft, you two, I'll throw it to Ryan. Where do you have this group ranked in like comparison to the last few years draft? Is it an A+ group of offensive linemen, B-?
See, that's interesting because at first glance, it looks like you have just chock full of tackles, and it's a surplus, one could say. But when you get into the nitty gritty and you really think about where these guys are going to be playing at the next level, Will Campbell probably moving to guard, Membu probably moving to guard, Kelvin Banks also probably moving to guard, Donovan Jackson, a swing that could legitimately play center, guard, and tackle at the next level. So it's a little hard to compare, I think, right now to previous classes just for that fact alone, because they're playing out of position. But talent wise, dude, it is off the charts. I'm looking at this. I have 4 tiers, and it is S tier, A plus 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 plus, one player. But
We know who it is, too.
Of course, spoiler alert. Then I got another tier that's like, you know what you're getting, and above average starter. And then I have a third tier, which is just an average guy. You know what you're getting with that. They're excellent at multiple different things, but they're a little bit more middle of the pack. And then I have some guys that are going to be some day 3 picks, maybe very, very low day 2 picks. It's loaded all across the board, and I think there's legitimately a case for having 15, 16, or 17 guys in the top 100, which is insane to me personally. I don't think I could think of a class that had that many prospects in the top 100. So if you're looking for some offensive line starters or depth, this is the class for you personally. Day 2 or day 3 picks might be the best value, though.
I think second round, you're right. Day 2, second to third round might be my favorite place to take a tackle, unless you're getting one in the top 10, because I have one that's my absolute favorite too. But I think you're knocking it out of the park by saying second, third round, right? Wait on a tackle. The prime position is in this year is not going to be tackle / guard. It's going to be edge rusher, interior. Those are the positions you want to focus on if you're drafting in the trenches. If you have need at tackle, you can get some really good ones in the first round, but I'd recommend waiting to the second or third. Tyler, who do you have top of your tier 1? Because Ryan and I definitely have 2 different guys.
Right. I have my tier 1, and I called it stud tackles. I do believe these guys will play tackle in the league. Number 1 is Will Campbell out of LSU. Number 2, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. And number 3, Armand Membu out of Missouri. All those guys are guys that I think will play tackle. Membu and Campbell have been up for discussion on draft Twitter and in league circles. And when we talk about them individually, I'll get into why I think both of them will play tackle. But I think they also would be very, very good guards if you decided to move them there.
I think Membu has actually been listed at tackle on some rankings, or as guard on some rankings, including, I think it's the NFL. I think the NFL Combine has him listed at tackle. If I don't want to be mistaken here. I'm checking now.
I mean, he did play tackle, so that would make sense. But the reason I personally would consider him is because of the arm length that Tyler brought up earlier.
Yeah.
We don't know
the big
for
reason, though.
certain until they perform combine on, I think, Sunday.
I think
I'm not
you're
mistaken.
right.
Yeah, they're the very last people to go, so we won't know until that Monday
Dang
pod. But we will absolutely update everyone accordingly. I would feel a little bit more confident someone with shorter arms in the interior. I feel like he excels at some things that other players do not. Specifically, I mean, I was watching him against Shamar Stewart, for instance. Armand Membu won, I would like to argue, 85 to 90% of the reps in that game against A&M. And I have a fun little stat if we're going off of these fun little stats. So he had a pressure rate of 2.7 against all of these top 50 prospects. You guys ready? Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart, James Pierce Jr., Scorton, of course, Donovan Ezeraku, and Jack Sawyer.
That's a lot of top 25 guys that you just named.
So the track record is there. He has proven himself against the best of the best in college football. I think it can translate to the NFL level, and I actually moved him up in my rankings. I put him above Calvin Banks Jr., who I before had him like top 25. So applause Tyler for convincing me on Membu. But that was a great pick, and I must say he will have a very long NFL career if he can stay healthy. But me personally, if he does end up having shorter arms when he has his measurables on Sunday, I'm likely going to put him at guard. But I see no reason why he can't play tackle because he has proven he can.
I think.
And
Go ahead, Ty.
at the Senior Bowl, he had 34-inch arms.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Membu and Campbell, you're right, Ty, are both going to play guard or tackle. Both can play tackle. And that's my top three as well. I have Campbell, Simmons, Membu. I think there's a teardrop between Campbell and Simmons, like to the point where Campbell I have him in his own tier. I have top 10, which is Will Campbell. That's tier 1. Tier 2 is first round guys, which is actually, it extends into guard. But Simmons and Membu are the first two guys there, and I could flip them very easily depending on one thing, and that is injury. I want to know more about Josh Simmons and when he will be playing and the health of him. If he's not as healthy as I hope he is, then I could easily flip Membu and go 2. But we'll find out more at a later date, probably, if anything, right? So I just have him actually highlighted as a big old red. I just gave him red letters. And then, so yeah, I agree. It is a 1, 2, 3. Those are my top 3 tackles. And I think they're all quality top 15 picks if you were to make them.
Yep.
Top 20.
Top half of the first round, easy for me.
Agreed.
Offensive line injuries, especially in the lower body, concern me much more than if you were a corner. So that, Tyler, I hate to say it, is one of the most concerning red flags I see with Josh Simmons. Amazing tackle. Don't get me wrong. But injury alone, not even going into what he doesn't do great in his game and on film, it's so concerning for me as a general manager. I have to put him towards the end of the first round for that fact alone. He would be a great draft day steal if he can actually stay healthy.
Philly.
But Aaron, don't even start. Howie Roseman's probably the doctor on the combine stats.
You sent a picture of him as an AI doctor in the group chat earlier.
It was so funny because who was it? It was Abdul Carter.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
The stress fracture.
Mr. Carter, we'll see you now.
I mean, he didn't compete in the combine. He should really probably go 19 to the Bucks. I think that's probably the earliest you can possibly take him.
You're right. And Eagles will trade up to 18 and snag him right there.
Yeah.
Ryan, where are you at with the top 3 tackles? Campbell, Membu, Simmons. You said, do you have them ranked in the same 1, 2, 3 as me and Tyler?
I have Campbell, Simmons, Membu at 2, 3, 4.
Okay. But John, just say who's one.
Mr. Donovan Jackson.
I'm letting you know right now.
That's not a surprise to anyone.
I'm letting you know right now that reaction of my face, Tyler's face, and your face saying Donovan Jackson is going to be the thumbnail of this podcast video. I'm just letting you know.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I want everyone to know that I was on the bandwagon or on the train before everyone else hopped on. And that would be my claim to fame as a future NFL general manager.
Talk to me about why you love Donovan Jackson. We've heard the gist of it on pod after pod after pod after pod, but break it down. Why do you actually think he's the number one offensive line prospect in this class? No, all jokes aside.
Well, all jokes aside, I think he has the longest proven track record of anyone in this class. He performed at a high level in high school, 5-star recruit, 99 overall. I think he was like 7 national. We saw him move from guard to tackle in his senior season because of the Josh Simmons injury. From that alone, how he performed at a very high level post Penn State game. I'm putting an asterisk on the Penn State game because if you're moving positions, I don't think people understand how hard that is.
1 week of practice
never played the position. So
1 week of practice is a necessity if you're gonna. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, especially against the number one player in the 2025 NFL draft class, let alone anyone else.
I think he might have been number one in last year's draft class too.
He very well could have been. I think he has the best track record among anyone in this class. I think he excels with his intelligence. He can quickly pick up stunts. He's actively looking for color. And that's what I love in offensive lineman prospects. When you are just there to have fun and play ball, great. Donovan Jackson is a man on a mission looking to run someone over. He might not be the strongest out there. He might not be the fastest out there. I do not care. Dude has heart, and you can see it on the film. Yes, he might whiff.
Such a big heart, guys. I love it.
Yeah. He might whiff every now and then. Don't get me wrong. I see it. But Donovan Jackson could legitimately play center, guard, and tackle at the NFL level. He has the measurables, or will have the measurables at the combine. As far as height and weight goes, he has the measurables to play all three. I can't knock this guy for anything. It's truly a blue chip prospect, and I'm befuddled why people have him in the 20s and 30s because I think he's the number 4 overall player in the class. Before we got on this podcast, I actually was trying to tell you guys, I moved Malachi Starks down because when I went back to the film, I loved Donovan Jackson even more, which is saying something.
PFF has Donovan Jackson 65th on their big board.
Shame on them.
6'4",
None of them
320.
should have a job.
It's based on pure numbers, brother. I hate to break it to you. At least they
Pure
say
numbers.
this.
Dude didn't allow a single sack on that entire run.
You're arguing with ghosts. I don't control their big board.
I like Donovan Jackson as a player.
I do too.
There's a couple reasons I can't get there. Number
To
one,
to put him top 4 in your entire class.
Yes, that
He's my
right
number one guard, mind you.
Slander.
Number one guard, number 4 offensive lineman behind the 3 tackles that we talked about earlier. Campbell's my favorite by far. Jackson's my number 1 guard, and I don't think it's a discussion. I think it's him, big gap, Booker. Tyler, go ahead. I just cut you off.
But he is not a very effective run blocker at this point. Multiple times, he doesn't generate a ton of power when he's going to block someone, put your face mask to somebody's chest and drive. And so he gets swimmed a lot because he ends up back bending and then gets swimmed. He does a little bit better when he's on the move and zone, but he just overall doesn't really have a ton of power. And so while he's a good pass blocker, his hands aren't there run blocking, and that leads to the combo of those two things. And I think his just play strength overall is not amazing. And so those 3 things make him not a great run blocker, and then knocks him down. The other thing, I went back and watched the playoff games, and he was just getting a ton of chip help, and he was getting a ton of formation help. And what I mean by formation help is they would have somebody over top of him, either to chip or to run a route. They did it a couple times where they ran a route underneath that edge, and so it gave him time to get out there. So
That's game planning, though.
No,
right, but I'm saying
it's
the point
making
there
up
is that
for
they're game
your
planning to protect him.
you're making up for your guard who switched to tackle, right? You have it's a decision the
But
coach has
he
made.
proves he could be an island.
But I'm saying that I don't think he completely did that because they game planned around him a lot.
I just attack. He seemed wobbly, right? The words I have here are wobbly, unsure of his movements at tackle. I do agree. Fantastic guard. He's powerful. He's a good positioner. He knows where to be. He struggles in the run, but he's a fantastic pass protector. He's fast. He's quick, right? Especially standing 320. He knows how to get off and he can get in a guy's face. I just
Light
don't.
on his feet.
Right.
Sure.
Ryan, I think the argument you made, I think the crux of it, if I'm to digest this correctly, is that you said he can be a top tier center, a top tier guard, and a top tier tackle. Right? You said that in your discussion. My rebuttal is, okay, if you show me a player that truly can do that, I'll look into it and maybe consider top 10. I don't think Jackson can do that. I think he's just a guard. And as just a guard, I do think he's a top 30 player. He's a top maybe 20 player. He's my guard 1. That said, he's just a guard. He's not the second coming of insert offensive lineman here, right? He's not the greatest pass blocker to walk the face of the earth. I don't think he's all that. I do think he's good, and I don't think Tyler and I are selling him short. But I do think you're a little high on Donovan Jackson, bud.
Well, I openly said he might not be the strongest out there, and it shows. I cannot lie, but he swings his hips so well. He gets his feet set. He turns his feet. He gets the job done.
I hear you.
Yeah, well, listen, and that's why he should be your number 4 player.
Yeah, you are standing on it. You're sleeping in the bed you made, right? That's all we can ask of any of us who look at the draft and look at prospects.
Standing on business.
Exactly. That said, I'm not on that same business with you. Have fun there. I'll send you a postcard. I do think he's a good player. I just think he's the best guard and not best tackle, or not best center.
For me, there's a couple guys. So when we're talking about guards, I'll start off. I think Kelvin Banks is a guard. So I don't know if anyone here disagrees.
What did he measure? Do we know?
Well, mine's not even really an arm length thing.
Oh, okay.
I think it's supposed to be. It's rumored to be under 34. That's not huge for me, and we can get into why I think Campbell and some of the shorter arm lengths can play tackle because you can make up for it in some ways. But
agreed.
I think Banks is a guard, and then so for me at 5, 6, 7 is Banks, Booker, and Jackson. Right
Who do you have
now,
at 4?
I have Grace Abel out of North Dakota State.
At 4? That's high.
At 4, he is a really good player. I think I put a question mark next to his position. We talked about the Senior Bowl. He played every position at the Senior Bowl, and that's why I don't really know where he's going to end up. He's a guy, he has 32.25-inch arms, but when we talk about how you make up for that, it is with phenomenal core strength, because you're probably going to be taking a lot of power rushes, guys trying to get into your chest. So you have to be able to stay in a good posture, eat that, and then drop and anchor. He does that really well. Leverage, exactly. His positioning and his sets are awesome. He's knee to crotch almost every time, which is where you want to be, so that you are trying to get them out in the speed rush, and then you eat some of those inside rushes. Stays square to the line of scrimmage as long as possible, and has good hand placement, and then varies his sets to keep defensive ends off to where they don't think he's just vertical setting every time, so they can just speed to power, speed to power, speed to power. So he makes up for it, I think. The other thing, he won the Senior Bowl. He was voted the best player at the Senior Bowl coming out of it, and that's big because he played FCS, and so the competition level is a bit of a question mark.
Granted, playing at NDSU is a kind of like a a weird level of FCS.
Right. They've won, double-digit championships in the last 15 years. They're a different breed out there, and he's the latest to come in that. Cody Mock was another one who killed the Senior Bowl. Shout out to Tampa Bay Bucks.
How's he playing?
He had a horrible rookie year and now is average to slightly above average, so showing improvement.
Good for him.
Yeah. But I watched the Colorado game, and Colorado legitimately has a very good defensive line. They were very high in the nation in sacks, and he played really, really well, and then went out and did what he did at the Senior Bowl. So I think that answers some of the competition questions as well. So when you pair that with a really clean tape, I just like Zabel a ton.
I see why I think you tried to put me on Zabel recently, and I have him at 7, right behind Jackson, Booker, and Banks. I think I agree he's a good player. Again, I just don't have him as high as 4.
Yeah, those guys are all in my same tier. And that's actually, this was the roundabout way to get to the point of Kelvin Banks, Tyler Booker, Donovan Jackson. You could tell me those guys are pretty much in any order, and I would say that works. Right now, I have them as Banks, Booker, Jackson. Not really very solid in that. So if you guys have just definitive stuff between those, go for it, and I will listen.
I throw Zabel in there, and you have my tier. I'm actually going to adjust that based on because I didn't have that fully broken down. No, but I think there is a tier, and then Marcus M'Bow is it M'Bow or M'Bow? Are you saying or M?
I say it M'Bow. That
M'Bow.
doesn't mean it's right, though, because I didn't really look it up.
It's like that song, M'Bop.
Yeah, it's hard for the pronunciation of the linemen because they never get called on.
Yup.
That's right. You can't look up highlights and get their names called.
Yeah, unless they're like top tier, like a freaking Will Campbell who just pancakes people for a living. No, I think there's a clear tier of guys there, and that is the Jackson, Booker, Banks, Zabel group for me. I have the split between Jackson and Membu is a teardrop. Ryan, where are you at with the other guards? I mean, we know you have Jackson high.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you. So in that second tier, like we've talked about, I actually do have Campbell, Simmons, Membu, Banks, Zabel, and Booker as like an A tier, above average starter. You know what you're getting. They do many things exceptionally well, and you only have a few cons. So I would put all of those in the A tier. Where I break it is Connerly, Williams, Milam, and Bow, with a few at the very end. I actually threw, shout out, Seth McLaughlin. I know you got destroyed in the Michigan game, but I still think you're top 14.
That's fair.
Yeah, he's another guy who was having a really good season, but then he tore his ACL. So that one's going to be, or actually it might have been his Achilles. It was his Achilles. Sorry,
those are both
his Achilles in practice.
Both brutal injuries to come back from, especially as an offensive lineman starting his NFL career. But you'd rather it happen now than a year into the job, right?
Yeah, I know that happened in like November, so he had to sit out that end of the season, but I think he performed very well up until that point. I think he did a phenomenal job at many different things. It was a little harder to rank him, but I did end up putting him in that tier versus the last few guys. But Josh Connerly is another guy that I actually would feel comfortable taking possibly in the second round. I mean,
I think there's a lot of second rounders in this group.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
2-year starter. He actually played semi-well against Abdul Carter at Penn State. I think he lacks strength, and we won't know until we see the combine bench press. But beyond that, he has great lower body strength, I think, in my opinion. He accelerates great, so getting those down the field blocks can do it. I don't know where he would fit on an NFL team, as in where his home will be for the next 4 to 5 years, depending on where he gets drafted. But he's young, and he could be a very good starter. Could also play guard. Again, it's none one of those guys that I would throw in that discussion. But it's it's so muddy for him, in my opinion, and that's why I put a little question mark on him in that third tier.
Yeah, I have him in my third tier projects with potential. It's him and Ursary because both of those guys, really, really good athletes, especially for their size, just not amazing tackles yet. But they're guys that you could definitely see, hey, we have this amazing clay. Can we mold them into something really good?
Right, there's a foundation. Ted Smith for Sumer Sports put out his correlation charts. What does he call them? This one is named Offensive Tackle, Combine Information and Playing Time Correlation. Basically, it says what events should you be good at as an offensive tackle to be good in the NFL. And this is Combine. The 40 time matters, 3-cone matters, age, vertical jump, broad jump all matter, right? Because those are signs of an athlete. The thing that I think is hilarious, everything is in the positives. So if you had a good combine, you're more likely to play. There's one bar in the negative, and that is bench. And that is a negative 0.013. Mind you, that is the highest, that is the longest bar, except with everything. It's a big margin, right? It shows that there's a ton of negative correlation. The better you are at bench, the less likely you are to be a starting offensive tackle, a good starting offensive tackle in the NFL because of bench press. The way that it's designed, you're pushing up and you're bringing it back down. Short arms, you're going to benefit from that because you just have a shorter motion to move. So it's going to be easier to go if the shorter your arms are, and the longer your arms are, the more likely you are to be a successful tackle. So there's a negative correlation there. You do not want the number one bench presser to be your offensive tackle first rounder, right? So I don't think that is the best indicator of strength, Ryan, to your point that you talked about. I forget which tackle were you talking about with strength? Connerly? You're talking about Connerly and the fact that he lacks strength.
Lack of strength in the upper body.
Right. I don't think we're going to get that from the bench press. If he shows that he's strong in the bench press, I have other concerns, and that'll be arm length. So I think either you flip him to guard and have a really strong guard if they do well at bench press, or you say, I'll wait. Because I do think that matters.
Well, he had over 34-inch arms at the Senior Bowl too, I believe. I'm going to double check that.
So he's probably not going to have a good bench press, and it's just going to have to look at.
Yeah, he had 34-inch arms exactly.
6'4", 315. So I mean, again, I'm not one of those guys you don't really know what to do with.
There's a lot of those. There's a lot of tweeners. There's some guys that we don't know exactly what to do with. I would argue there's only a few guys where I'm just like, yeah, he's a tackle. 100%. Everyone else is like a sliver of, are we sure that they're a tackle?
You could always make them a project and move them to center.
I mean, you could. But
long arms as a center is not the worst thing in the world.
No, but it's also not the easiest, I would say. I think you have to be more of a compact, I don't want to say you have to be compact, but it's more compact than some of the other positions.
Well, you got to have the lower body strength, that's for sure. But if you got long arms, keeps the T tackles off.
True. Is there anything else we should hit in this tier of the Jackson, Booker, Banks, Zabel, Mbao tier? I think Wyatt Milam is a name that I've been seeing thrown around a good bit. Is there something I'm missing with him? Because I haven't seen it yet. It's not that I haven't watched the film. It's that I don't get why people are talking about him as a first-round guy. He's just a day two, right?
Yeah, I saw somebody rank him as their first overall. It was just a random person on TikTok. This was not any of the big guys. But I don't see it either. He's a solid guy.
Yeah.
Bigger guy.
If someone takes him on day two, I'm just going to be like, oh, nice pick.
Yeah, I don't think he moves super well. Seemed to be pretty stiff to me. Got beat pretty easily by Carter on a couple plays, and that was Carter's first game as an edge. He seemed, basically the way I could put it is he seemed fine. And great round 2, round 3 pick for me. I don't see the round 1 hype.
Wyatt Milam out of West Virginia, 6'6", 317. But I also think, Tyler, your quote, he's fine, that kind of sums up a lot of the other guys that we're going to see in the rest of this class. Guys past, like the, what is it, Ursary? Ursary?
Ursary.
Ursary, Connolly, And then you start going a little lower, and you get to guys like Cameron Williams, Marcus Mbaugh, Anthony Belton, Tate Ratledge, who I think I'm curious to see how he does at the combine. But like, there's a bunch of guys there, right? They're just dudes. They're names. Are they NPCs? To be determined, right? It's the day 2 crop is stacked with protein, but I don't know if any of it's like a crazy flavorful bit of protein. It's just a bunch of good guys. You got to take your medicine.
Do you guys have a favorite out of that group that you think could hit more? Mine is Ariante Ursary, just because of 6'6", 340. He moves
weighed
really
in at 340.
well. That's what he's listed. I'd have to check. Oh, because he did go to the Senior Bowl, actually. So I can look at that right now. So, 339. Yep. So he was 6'5", 3/4, and 339. Big dude, and moves really well. He's able to lock into guys with his arms lock people out with his arms, lock into their pads with his hands. He's got vice grips. Just really, really solid guy, really strong guy. You can see that, but just bad footwork and too much lean. He's hip bending and back bending instead of bending at the knees, which is common for guys that are that tall. His anchor's fine, but I would like to see him be a little stronger in that area. But if you notice with the cons, it's a lot of stuff that you can work on and fix with a really good offensive line coach. And so out of that tier that we talked about of the Ursary, Connerly, some of the projects, Mbaugh, I would put that in that category as well. Ratledge, you listed off. Millam. He's the guy that I would bet on having the biggest percentage of his career, or the biggest likelihood percentage-wise that he's going to be a really good tackle.
Yeah. I think that there's an interesting crop. There's a few guys I'm curious about. How do they perform at the combine? How do they perform at their pro days? What do they weigh in as? What are the length of their arms? I want to know more before I make full-on assessments. And that would be Chase Lunt out of UConn, 6'8", 305. They have him listed on PFF. Tate Ratledge, 6'6", 320 on PFF out of Georgia. Anthony Belton, who's going to weigh in, I think, around 340 at the combine. And then I think that was then Cam Williams, who is PFF has in top 70 out of Texas. Ryan, you said you have him pretty high, right?
Cam Williams on my big board is actually ranked 53. I put him there because he has the physical traits. He lacks the footwork and the bend, like Tyler was actually just saying about another prospect. So I'm really interested to see where he falls. Again, we'll get all those measurables on Sunday, but he is 6'5" and 335 according to NFL.com. So that's official. But he wasn't at the Senior Bowl, and I don't think he was at the Shrine Bowl either. So I don't think we have an arm length on him.
Yeah, because he finished out the season with a knee injury, and so I wonder if he'll even test at the combine.
I hope so.
Just coming off, which, because that's his thing, is he's a big athlete, so it would be good for him. But I just wonder how the knee is at this point.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks of when we had to schedule this episode. We had to move it around based on the combine, right? But because there's this big old group of, I'll draft him with 33 to 70, right? I'm very okay with any of these guys. Milam, Williams, Belton, etc. I want to see their numbers. I want to let their combine numbers adjust me in one way or the other. How do they perform at bench? How do they perform at freaking 40, right? What's their 10-yard split? How do they jump? I want to see this kind of stuff officially from the combine before I make my full-on rankings. But this is our full-on rankings show. This is the one where we deep dive on offensive line. So we'll, again, on Monday, we'll bring it back and talk about this. We'll make it a point to talk about this group specifically so that we can get a finalized
set in stone.
Yeah, how it adjusts, and we'll be releasing big boards throughout too, so that'll go up and down.
Right. And don't get me wrong, these guys that we're talking about in this third tier are still possible starters. Just because we don't absolutely love them as a prospect, there's so many guys above them. It's so hard.
Possible, right? That's the difference between the last tier and this one is possible. Yeah. They're not locks for starters like Jackson, Campbell, and Banks. I feel decent that they're going to be starting. You never know. It's the draft, right? I mean, Cody Mauch was taken as a first rounder, 30 something to the Buccaneers, and he had a bad rookie year, and so boom, he's just struggling. But yeah, that's the way it works. but right, possible starters. They're less likely to be a full-time starter, more likely to be a project guy. But they're good picks. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I hate Marcus Mbao. If you draft him, you're getting an F on the draft grade show. I don't think there's any guys like that. I don't think there's any super big red flags. It's just a lot of meh.
Because this is the whole class, there's just not a lot of separation between these guys. Again, I have in my big board probably is going to be Kelvin Banks Jr., Tyler Booker, and Donovan Jackson just hanging out right next to each other because there's just not a lot of separation. It's really your scheme fit. Do you guys have any sleeper guys you like in this class? I got two.
Emory Jones Jr. out of LSU. Brother is young. Like, he will be 21 by the time the season starts. 6'6", 315. Kind of light if he weighs in at that. I'm curious. I want to know his testing. Listed as tackle. He's just... I like an SEC tackle that's a raw build, and I'm curious to see how he performs. It's not really a sleeper. It's more of a, I'm going to keep my eye on you. We're going to watch your career very... what's the line from Star Wars? We're going to watch your career very closely.
Yeah. He came in at 6'4", 3/4, and 312 at the senior.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay. Put him at tight end.
No, 312's fine. Dude.
No, he's fine.
That's fine. Which it's interesting for him because he, coming into this year, was mocked as a first-round pick, and that was way too early before the college season mocks, and then has fallen down. But I thought he played pretty well at the Senior Bowl, helped himself there, so maybe a good combine can bump him up. Ryan, did you have any deep sleepers?
I actually do. Number one was Anthony Belton, who had a phenomenal Senior Bowl. It was probably the second O-lineman beyond Gray Zabel at popularity at the Senior Bowl on Twitter. Again, we didn't get to go, so we only got to see what other people talked about.
That's how it is. But it's word of mouth.
Anthony Belton, freaking massive. I think I have his numbers 6'5", 345. And I guess people were expecting him to run around a 5'3", 40. So dude is a tank. So look out for him. But in addition to that, Jalen Rivers could also be a little sleeper, 6'5",
Miami, right?
Yep. So both guys that could perform really well at the combine and look to boost their stock. I think right now, at best, they're a mid to late day 3 pick. But with a good combine, they could solidify themselves as a day 3 pick.
Yeah, Tyler, you definitely have sleepers, right? You're just letting us go first like a gentleman.
Yeah, my top sleeper, Brandon Crenshaw Dixon out of Florida. Another big guy, 6'7", 322. That was unofficial. I need to look. He weighed in the Shrine Bowl, but did not get a chance to check
older,
that
isn't
out. Oh man, I don't know his age off the top of my head. I know
PFF has him at 24.
24? Wow, I did not know he was that old. But honestly, when I'm drafting guys on day 3, I just don't care about their age. I just want guys that are going to be able to play for me because a lot of day 3 players don't end up playing for NFL teams. So whereas in the first round, it's big because you're trying to take massive swings and get guys that are going to be cornerstones of your team for 10 plus years or 8 plus years, depending on the position. In the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, I just want guys that will be able to play for me. Brandon Crenshaw Dixon's going to be that. Size is awesome. Really long arms. Moves well for his size. Has a solid anchor. Cons are gets leveraged some because he is taller, right? And so guys get under his pads. And then while he moves well for his size, I wouldn't say he's an amazing athlete. And so he still struggles with some quickness and speed around the edge. Princely Uman Mielen got him a couple times with that in the Ole Miss game. But I think a really solid guy who, based on his size and continues to develop, will be a swing tackle. Maybe he's your 6th offensive lineman and then can be, an average starter when you get into some situations with injuries.
6th man of the year contender.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm really interested to see our big board on Thursday because with Donovan Jackson at 4,
he's just getting pumped
shake
up.
Some things up.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well,
we actually should have
he called me out with being like Josh Simmons is gonna pull the ranking up. Like your Jalen Royals and your Donovan Jackson aren't gonna completely skew our big board rankings.
We might have
There's
to have
always an outlier.
Exactly. Well, and
There's-
that's we'll be all over the map a little bit, but that's what's fun about doing it with 3 people.
my professional credibility
It's more of a
relies on
consensus.
Donovan Jackson and Jalen Royals.
I think he's gonna be a good player.
I do too, just not that good. Tyler, do you have any
Jalen
more?
Royals, wide receiver 1.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
After the
Stop
catch,
it.
king.
Oh, jeez.
Stop
He is
it.
king.
There's okay.
I literally sent that to you guys today too.
Yeah, he played for Utah State. Luther Burden's the Yak King. Like, let's be clear. Luther, stop it. Not the wide receiver show. Cutting this off. Tyler, are there any more sleepers you have, or should we get out of here before Ryan's used more slander?
Dude, I want to talk about Willie Lampkin out of UNC.
UNC.
You want to know how tall this
Pulled
guy
that
is?
one out of the bag.
You want to know how
He
tall
was
this
so
guy
deep
is?
on my list.
He
I
is
got it. Can I guess?
5'10".
Is he 5'10",
He is
sub 300?
5'10", 270. But my man is the angriest player on the field at all times. There's no one who wants to hit people harder and drive people deeper into the field than Willie Lampkin.
The
I
funniest
have no
part is
idea
that
if he can play
his
in the
name rhymes
NFL.
with napkin, and I think that's the funniest part. The hardest hitter in the class is just rhymes with napkin. It's
Pulls
great.
people like a napkin. Like I said, I have zero idea if he can play in the NFL. I know somebody threw out that he might be a fullback. That I think would be really cool.
There was a lot of talk about JJ Pegues,
Pegues, yep.
Pegues at like fullback wildcat. They had him positioned in so many weird positions today on the tackle to Ole Miss, defensive tackle. They had him try out as fullback as well at the combine, and he just. Anyways, yeah, fullback is a weird position. Moving players around out of position is odd.
Yeah, and Pegues played tight end in high school, and that's what he was recruited as. Actually, he was the number 9 tight end in his class. So there's a little bit of precedent, and then he ran the Wildcat at Ole Miss.
Yeah, he had 5 rushing touchdowns, I think is what they said.
Yeah, well, and at one point before the Florida game, at least, he was 14 for 14, I think, on 4th down conversions.
Gosh.
And then Florida ended up stopping him twice, so the stat wasn't as cool. But
I bet you're happy with that.
I'm very happy. Big win for the Gators on that day. Big win. Knocked Ole Miss out of the college football playoff. But so
Had a
he was
good
another
year,
one of my
too.
sleepers. That one's more fun than anything. But I just think he finds a way to be on a roster in some capacity. Patrick Ricard style, maybe, if you think about it in that way. And more
Taysom
people are
Hill.
using fullbacks. Well, I don't know about all that. Sorry, I'm talking about Lampkin. Pegues is legitimately a good player.
Right. One of the more popular undersized offensive linemen out there is Jason Kelsey, who weighs like I think 282 right now is what it says on Google, and he's 6'3".
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what the Willie Napkin can do standing under 6 foot and under 300 pounds. That'll be an interesting through line to follow. Thank you all for listening. This has been a fun show. A lot of offensive line talk. We're going to do a mini little referendum on this podcast on Monday when we break down their combine tape, talk about this mid-tier of Milam and Belton and all of them, and then talk about Donovan Jackson some more because I'm sure Ryan's going to bring him up. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back Monday with combine recap, offensive line talk, and then Thursday, Big Board 2.0. We're going to break down our consensus big board that we're going to put together, and it's going to be fantastic. Thank you all for listening. Mind the gap on your way out.